On today's show, the LA Clippers on a 6-game losing streak, the Houston Rockets on a 6-game winning streak, and both of them are set to match up on Friday night at the Staples Center. Will it be James Harden's first win as a Clipper? And also going to be joined by former LA Clipper beat writer and current LA sports columnist Mirjam Swanson to talk about the state of the Clippers on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and in my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA sports and LA Clipper content, and Locked On Clippers, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I want you to let me know what you think of the Clippers' chances going into the Houston Rockets game on Friday night. It should be a good one. And this episode is brought to you by GameTime, the best place to get the best deals on last-minute tickets. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So, let's get a little preview going before we get Mirjam on the show. The Houston Rockets, absolute night and day from last season's team. A very unserious team in which the Clippers beat every time they played them. Ime Udoka, now the coach of the Rockets. Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, two experienced guys that have been in playoff situations. Of course, Fred VanVleet won a championship with Norman Kawhi in Toronto. So they got an upgraded team, and then a lot of young players. Alperen Sengun, Jabari Smith Jr., Jayshawn Tate, Jalen Green. So they are an improving team. Before the season, I had them ranked 12th in my preseason predictions. And I've actually watched their first 7 games. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of what you should expect to see. So the first thing I want to say is they lost the first 3 games to Orlando, got beaten up by them in Orlando. And that just looked like their first game. They were very disorganized. They were turning the ball over. Then they lost in overtime to the Spurs in a game which they really should have won. And then finally lost to the Warriors, and it was a close game. Fred VanVleet shot really poorly in that one. So they started out 0-3, which for the Clippers, they started out 3-1. It's kind of like both teams are opposite right now. Clippers are 3-6, having lost 6 in a row, and the Rockets are 6-3, having won 6 in a row. So, I'm sorry, the Clippers are 3-7. So it's still a little bit of a switch roles kind of thing. The Rockets' wins, though, I want to say, they have not been, even though the performances have been impressive, especially relative to the standard of play that they had last year, they haven't beaten that many great teams. And when I say that, let me just contextualize. They beat the Hornets in their first win. Hornets aren't very good. Rockets are better than them. They beat the Kings in 2 straight games without De'Aaron Fox. They are nowhere near the same team without De'Aaron Fox. And then they beat the Lakers without Anthony Davis. They absolutely clobbered them. But the Lakers without Anthony Davis are really not special in my opinion. Mind you, they're already missing Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent. And then I haven't watched the Pelicans game, so I actually don't know if anybody was gone for that one. But the Nuggets game, they were missing Jamal Murray, who the Clippers almost beat in Denver. So I don't want Clipper fans to get too intimidated by the fact that the Rockets have won 6 games in a row. They have beaten a bunch of shorthanded teams. But granted, let me tell you something. This is why it doesn't really matter that much. And it's exactly why I said that the Clippers, just because they beat bad teams in the beginning of the year, doesn't mean that they weren't going to be able to keep being a great team. Winning and winning commandingly builds confidence, no matter who you're playing against. Of course, playing against better competition is going to be tougher, but when you start building winning habits, when you start playing well defensively as a team, when you start shooting the ball well, it just breeds confidence through you, and as a team, you start building winning habits. It becomes contagious, and everybody wants to do it more, and it becomes like a drug, addicting. And that's what I was saying about the Clippers in the beginning of the season, building those habits. You just get a couple of wins down, and you start having less of those off nights, less of those nights where, oh, nothing's going for you, because you are feeling confident. You are getting the best version of these guys because you are building good habits, and that's what the Rockets are doing. So they're coming in form. They're coming in, both teams, Clippers and the Rockets, top 10 in the league in three-point percentage, and somebody who's having a hell of a season for the Houston Rockets right now, Dillon Brooks. Bit of an outcast with Memphis, had a really rough series against the Lakers, was trolled on social media to a crazy level, and he has come back this season. Everybody questioned Houston giving Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet that money, but what it's done is given the team a veteran presence. And mind you, Dillon Brooks is not even that much of a vet. He was in the Final Four in 2017, so this is his 7th year in the league. But when you have a team of a bunch of young guys like Şengün, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Jae'Sean Tate, these guys that have come in the league the last 3 years in the post-Harden era, anybody that was in the league when James Harden was on the Rockets, that's a vet for these guys. And it's not just Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet. They also have Jeff Green coming off the bench. So they've got a couple of vets mixed in, which, it's very hard to become a solid team with just young guys because it's just a lot of young mistakes. You don't have any calming presence. And having Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks as those kind of stabilizers has really helped the Houston Rockets. So, and DB, we know what he brings defensively as NBA fans, but it's his offense, his erratic shooting that was a problem in the past. Well, this season, he's 3rd in the league in three-point percentage through 9 games, 55% from the field and 53% from 3, 84% from the line so far for Dillon Brooks while playing all NBA level defense. So expect him to be guarding Paul George on Friday night. Why do I say Paul George instead of Kawhi? 2 reasons. 1, Kawhi Leonard has not been our best player this season. And 2, the length and size of Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be enough to deter Kawhi in the sense that Kawhi is having a hard time getting by guys, and he's not going to be getting by Jabari Smith Jr., I don't think. Jabari Smith Jr. is good on his feet. He's got that length and size and athleticism. So I would put Jabari Smith on Kawhi Leonard. And, of course, switch 1 through, I wouldn't switch 1 through 4 if I'm Houston. I would not switch Fred VanVleet onto Kawhi or Paul George. I would switch 2 through 4 if I were the Rockets. Obviously, Şengün is going to match up against Zubac. Now, that's going to be a big matchup for Zoo. Şengün's super crafty. He's got that floater down pat. What kind of performance are we going to see from Zubac? Of course, he had a really good 3rd quarter against Denver, but then in the 4th quarter was sat out. That was very controversial. He's got a little bit of size on Şengün. Şengün is the more skilled player, and he's having a much better season. How will Zubac do? Will he get a couple blocks? Will he get outplayed? I'm very interested in that. Jalen Green, a player who has been known as inefficient his first 2 years, but when his mid-range is falling, he can be a problem in drop coverage. And the Houston Rockets have 2 guys in Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green in their starting lineup that will look to exploit the Clippers in drop coverage. So the point of attack defense needs to be sharp. As far as the other defenders for Houston, I think Fred VanVleet should guard James Harden. He's a pesky defender. He can get over screens well. And then on Westbrook, it should be Jalen Green just to match his athleticism. Because if you put Fred VanVleet on Westbrook, I guarantee Russ is going to try to post him up a bit. And I don't know how good Jalen Green's screen navigation is just because I've yet to watch him too much. And James Harden, I think the Clippers, especially after the last game Harden had, they're going to try to keep getting him going. And James, he's averaging about 1.5 points per possession on pick and roll. Should I say the Clippers are averaging about 1.5 points per possession on Harden pick and roll so far, which is a pretty good number. So let's see if that number goes up. But as I said, the Houston Rockets are in form right now. They're a team that's playing for their coach. He's completely changed the culture. Jackson Gatlin from Locked On Rockets told me before the season that it's just a different feel. It's a level of structure and organization that they never had with Silas. And the eye test completely matches up. You're getting the most out of these young guys, and one of those young guys being Jae'Sean Tate. So if you start seeing Jae'Sean Tate make a bunch of threes on Friday night, it's not coming out of nowhere. This guy is shooting 43.5% from 3. So the Rockets, they'll be formidable, but the Clippers, how can they get it done? It is James Harden's former team, the franchise he gave so much to, so maybe it's poetic that he gets the dub, his first dub against them. I don't know when the last time the Rockets beat the Clippers was. I'm just guessing here, but I think the last time the Clippers beat the Rockets the Rockets beat the Clippers was the Russell Westbrook takeover in the second half in 2020, right before the pandemic and right before the Capella trade. He was getting to the rim at will against us. So let's see. Yeah, we've won 7 straight games against the Rockets. Oh, okay. We lost May 14th, 2021. So we lost actually the last game or one of the last games of the 2021 regular season because they had sat out Kawhi. Yeah, Luke Kennard was our leading scorer in that game. We started Luke Kennard, Jay Scrub, Rondo, Marcus Morris, and Zoo. No Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard, no Terrence Mann in that one. So it's been a while. 7 straight wins against Houston. Can we make it 8? Coming up, going to be joined by Mirjam Swanson of the OC Register to talk about the state of the Clippers, what the vibes were really like at training camp, and what she thinks of the whole Harden-Russ starting conversation. Going to be talking about that coming up. This episode of Locked On Clippers is brought to you by BetterHelp. The end of the year can be tough. You reflect on your year. Sometimes you may have not accomplished all the goals that you set out to. And you might be struggling, you might need someone to talk to, and you might need someone to help you get on your feet to get back in the right mindset for that coming year. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel sad about some kinds of things or some kind of anxiety. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings and make it a lot better. Therapy can be a bright spot amidst all of the stress and change, and it can give you something to look forward to, someone to talk to, and somebody you can feel safe with. I've had some moments in life where I've gone to therapy and it's helped me in those situations, and you can do the same. And I think I suggest you go to BetterHelp to give it a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if you feel like you haven't found the right one for you yet. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. I got to tell you a little something about GameTime. GameTime is the best place to get the best last-minute deals on tickets. If you need to get a ticket for Friday's game against Houston and you don't know if you can go till last minute, well, GameTime is the place to be. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the best place to find last-minute seats. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for any sport, even concerts. And the GameTime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Joining me now, very special guest, Mirjam Swanson, former LA Clipper beat writer and now current LA sports columnist at the OC Register. Mirjam, welcome to the show. It's nice to have you on.
Thank you. Nice to meet you on here, Dime Dropper.
Oh, anytime. So right now, Clippers 0-5 with James Harden, lost 6 straight games. Let me know, where do you see the state of the Clippers as far as how much fans should be worried right now and how much they should be, maybe hopeful that they're going to get things together? Where do you see things?
Everything's fine. What are you talking about?
We've been worse.
Yeah, right. I'd be worried if I were the Clipper fan. It doesn't seem to fit quite right. And what I think makes it all the more painful is that it looked like they were rocking pretty well before they made the trade. So that, kind of a tease. And then they blew it up a little bit. And I do get why they did it. I mean, if you can add James Harden, you would, for guys who were, on paper, it makes sense. Right. But but basketball's not played on paper. So I kind of thought that they would be a little more clever with how they're deploying it than they seem to have been. Like, I don't know, like square peg, round hole, kind of James and Russ together, which we've talked about. But yeah, I don't know. They got to figure it out pretty quickly because the things are gonna get away from them, I think.
Yeah, so I read one of your recent articles, and you were actually on my side, which is James Harden going to the bench and being the sixth man. Talk about what your lens was there, and where you kind of came to the conclusion that that's the route that the Clippers should go.
Well, I mean, I as you said, I think it was yesterday, right? Yesterday's pod where you kind of laid it out, like for whatever, as much as, okay, you can look at James and you say, okay, he's a tremendous passer, he's a better shooter and more dependable scorer, and can space the floor, and of course you want those things next to Kawhi and PG, right? But for whatever reason, PG and Russ are just, they play beautiful basketball together, and there's numbers that back that up. And Kawhi and PG and Paul were playing well together. And I don't know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of, right? Like,
yeah, I would say that.
Right. And then, or you could, try to force a fourth dude who isn't doing at all what they were doing before into the equation. And it just, like, we're watching him, who they played on, was it Sunday that
Memphis,
they played?
yeah.
Memphis, yeah. And it's just, Russ is push, which is allegedly what the Clippers wanted to do this year. And it was working because it just picked up the energy in a way that it was really kind of like fun to watch and effective. And, because Kawhi and PG are not necessarily like fast, high flying, moving dudes, but like Russ kind of pulled them along with him. And, they were getting more shots and they were playing better defense, and they were just, everybody, like, when the, basketball is like an emotional game, and it kind of picks up the energy. And it was working. and James is, more methodical, pound the rock and then give it to Kawhi with a few seconds left and let him shoot something, whatever. Like, that's probably my own bias, but like, but I could just picture James Harden just annihilating second units, right? Like, who?
Yeah, I can too.
So like, and I know obviously the politics of it are like, one guy's making, $1 gazillion and the other guy's signed for not very much. So you're not supposed to do that, but like, who cares? Like, do you want to win basketball games or not?
Yeah. So a couple of things there. What do you say to the people? By the way, for all the listeners, I didn't bring Mirjam on just because she agrees with me. I actually told her we should have you on the podcast before she wrote that article. So just so people don't think I'm bringing her on just because she agrees. But let me ask you this. What do you think when people will say, well, the Clippers were playing bad teams early in the season? That doesn't show people anything. The way they just played,
but they just played Memphis. Memphis is a bad team, and they didn't look very good. I mean, that didn't work against them.
That's a great
right? Like, but okay, so Harden, like, Harden has been saying, and Tyson saying, like, this is his training camp. He's, didn't have training camp. He hasn't played basketball in a very long time. Like, he's a human being too. He's not in like tip top NBA shape. To which I would say, well, that's his fault, but whatever. Okay. But like, even so, just Russ and Harden play at different speeds. And, it's just like, I don't understand how you play them next to each other. And then Ty's quotes today from my beat guys at practice where, Russ go stand in the corner, which, like, oh, the Lakers tried that, y'all, and didn't end well for anyone. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it is encouraging to hear that Russell Westbrook is still shooting well from three in the corner. But yeah, it's definitely not ideal. Definitely not where he's maximized. And right. You're right about the different speeds. It's very different. I mean, Russ really wants to push. At first, it seemed like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were more suited for a half-court style because, as you said, I mean, Paul George is a hell of an athlete, but he's been through so many injuries in the past. And Kawhi definitely is more of a half-court kind of player. However, what you said that really I agree with is it seems like Russ kind of changed that. It seemed like they were more willing to push in the beginning of the season, and we were getting tons of good looks in transition. Then there's the other argument, as I said, people are going to say we weren't playing anybody good. But as you said, Memphis isn't that good. I guess their argument to that would be this is going to take time. This is going to take time, and eventually it'll come good. I'm a very big, if it ain't broke, don't fix it person, not just in basketball, but in life. If I think things are going well, I don't like switching them up until I see that it can't work. So that's why, people really overestimate how much time Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George have had together. I counted last year. They only played 9 games, the 3 of them together, before Paul went down. So we never really have had a chance to see what if you want to call it a big 3, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Russell Westbrook could be. But I think especially the Clipper fans are kind of divided right now. There's a lot that want Westbrook starting, a lot of them that attend games and see that energy that you talked about. You get that in person a lot with Russ. You really see the way he involves the crowd and stuff like that. And then James Harden, there's people that can't stand the fact that Russ doesn't get respected as a shooter. So they love James Harden's pick and roll ability. They love his offensive prowess and what he did with Philly last year. So it's definitely going to be a conversation, I think, that heats up in Clipperland. But I think the James Harden people, and I've said this for months, the people that are pro James Harden, they're not big on Westbrook. And I feel like, especially on social media, they're very afraid to say it because Russ had one thing I've learned about covering Russ, he has a hive of followers. I mean, it is unbelievable how many fans. Have you experienced those?
Dude, I've seen them. They haven't come for me yet, but I'm, at some point they will, I'm sure. What did they is there a name for the Russ stands? Is there?
I don't know. I saw James Harden fans being called Harden FC, like Harden Football Club. I was like, is that a real thing? Or fan club? Maybe it's fan club.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't know.
Russ stands need one. Yes.
When we got James Harden, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
No. Go ahead.
When we got James Harden, I only picked up 2 new followers, couple new commenters on my YouTube, but when the Clippers got Westbrook, I gained 60 followers. It was insane. I mean, so many of the people that listen now are just Westbrook fans. And it's almost like, I don't want you guys to leave when Westbrook's time with the Clippers is over. I want you to stay around. But it is, I definitely have that. Go ahead.
Can I ask, what do you make of that? What is it that Russ does that just resonates with basketball fans so much?
That's a great question. And I think it's his passion. I think it's that he's emotional. And he's the type of guy that's going to roar to the crowd. And he's just a vocal guy. I think these emotional players, the LeBrons, the Magics, the Kobes, and the Russ, these guys, they really resonate with a certain crowd. Me being somebody that's in that crowd, I think Chris Paul, when he was with the Clippers, he had that same thing. Maybe not as likable, I'd say, even though I love Chris Paul because of what he did for the Clippers. But Westbrook definitely has a more, for example, when Chris Paul was on the Clippers, there weren't many people on other teams that liked Chris Paul. Whereas with Westbrook, people love this guy. And I think it's just, besides the passion, when he was in his prime, even now he's still in such great shape, but his athleticism is just, I used to think watching him, there were two of them on the court. So
right. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So do you think, though, 5 games in a row loss with Harden, got Houston coming up on Friday, do you think things are bound to get better? I mean, how can it get worse, right? I know as a Clipper fan, it's very dangerous to say that, but how can it get worse?
Oh, man.
Besides injuries.
Well, we don't want injuries. Never want injuries. Yeah. Let them figure it out with all 4 of them. That's the fun part. Of course it could get worse. They could lose again. I mean, they could. I don't have their schedule in front of me, but
well, Houston next.
Yeah. Okay. So Houston is playing well.
Very well.
And as much as Harden, and they have guys who, they wanted more than Harden, Van Vliet is their guy, right? So they didn't need James because they got him. And Dylan Brooks, of course, feels some kind of way about everything. So yeah, I don't know. That's going to be tough. At some point, I feel like Ty Lue is going to figure this out somehow. Whether he does what you and I want him to do, I mean, he's smarter than I am. So we'll see. But they got to try something other than what they're doing. And if it's just a matter of, well, wait till James gets settled in and gets in shape, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't, at this point, I don't expect them to win until they start winning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, got to see something. And coming up, going to be talking about the upcoming games and wanted to find out some stuff about preseason and training camp. Going to be talking about those. I got to tell you a little something about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy sports app in North America. With the basketball season kicked off, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So if you wanted to take Paul George for 3-pointers made, plus Travis Kelce for receptions, you can do that on the Specials League. Want to play alongside some of the Prize Picks favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, so you talked about training camp, preseason, and all that for a bit. Were you at Media Day this year?
I was.
So, okay, I need to ask this question because I've been trying to ask some of the people that were around it. The whole vibes conversation. A lot of Clipper fans were talking about how the team was smiling so much and Kawhi Leonard looked the happiest he's ever been. And you saw the Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland enthusiasm seeping into the team during training camp. And it felt like so many people had kind of written the Clippers off compared to last season at the same time where everybody was saying, oh, Kawhi's back. You saw what the Clippers did when he and Paul George weren't healthy. All you got to do is plug Kawhi back in, and now you have a championship contender. This offseason and going into this season, the conversation was not really about the Clippers. Everybody was kind of talking about in the West, Denver, Phoenix, and the Lakers. And it just felt like that under the radar, media coverage was going to help the team because the Clippers seem to just do better when they're low key. But then we had some conflicting reports that the vibes were all a smoke screen and all that. What did you see in terms of, the team camaraderie in Media Day? Did it seem like spirits were high, or were we just being fed, certain PR stuff?
I wasn't at training camp in Hawaii. So after they left, the Media Day space in Playa Vista, I don't know what happened exactly there besides what I read and watched, which I don't know how much you could get a sense of that anyway. But no, at Media Day, I basically spent most of it just kind of stalking Russ, just just watching him because he was just dancing and talking to everyone, and if you saw, Russ in a good mood is impossible to miss, right? And just stopping and talking to babies and families and, whatever, and just bouncing around and being a really happy version of himself. And as you see on the court, I felt like that kind of energy was in the room in a way that I hadn't felt at other Media Days, he's just such a big personality and such a big presence when he's just dancing around and laughing. He had Kawhi laughing, so yes, I think in that regard, there, it's not, you see it on the court with him. So it was the same way. And as far as sort of expectations being different, it was, I thought the players' responses to everything was that Nico, poor Nico for you guys, that, he was this is good for us because exactly what you just said. We'll be better when we don't have expectations. Zoo was, of course, sweet Zoo was I'm sorry to the fans that we haven't gotten it done yet. But everybody else was kind of we don't care what, allegedly, what athletes say. We don't care what anybody says. We're going to do our own thing and we're going to blah, blah, blah. but it seemed like a kind of like a productive, like no one, I felt like nobody was like beating their chest and like out to show the world. They were just like, we're going to keep it like in-house and take care of our business. And who cares what people are saying kind of thing. But that seemed like the right response to me. I thought that they were in a good place. And I thought, and I thought Russ was like, I think the column I wrote about out of that was like, because I'd, been watching Russ on the Lakers, the previous years, and like his personality didn't really fit on them because the Lakers already had an alpha, like LeBron, it's LeBron's team. But the Clippers needed that voice and they need that guy and that energy. And I was like, oh my God, like them with Russ, they might be cooking. And they they were for like 3 games or 4 games. But as far as it being a smokescreen, I mean, I don't know them that well. I'm not with them every day this year.
Right.
Media day seemed legit. But since then, I don't know. All these guys have egos, and they're all fighting for playing time. And there was a lot of stress going. I think the Harden rumors that have been kind of followed the team all summer and into the season weighed on people too, I think. So that was probably part of it.
So a couple final questions. Do you think that this team has a chance to maximize its potential without changing the starting lineup? Or do you think it's a must? It's a must to do. They have to do it.
Got to do it.
Yeah, yep. I tend to agree. I don't know how long it's going to take. It's it goes back to the conversation of last year. People were saying, well, Ty took so long with Reggie and Marcus Morris when it looked like it was their time to go to the bench, and now you got a future Hall of Famer to have these kind of conversations with. Whichever one you do end up benching, Westbrook or Harden, it's going to be a tough conversation. I guess some more, fun, lighthearted questions at the end. What about a player? What about a player that was just fun to interview, fun to cover? I know it seems like every beat writer has their guys, but who are someone that you kind of connected with?
Really love Reggie Jackson. Such a smart, inquisitive, like earnest dude. So I really liked him. But I also like Nico, so insightful, thoughtful, and kind with his time. And honestly, Justice Winslow was like the funniest guy that came through. He was only there for a minute, but like there would be so many times where I would just like be like cracking up with his timing. Like he's a very funny person. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. I could kind of like go on and on. Like Pat Bev is such a character.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I quite enjoyed quite a lot of these guys. So thank you, Clippers, for like bringing them aboard.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Mirjam, this was so much fun. Thanks so much for coming. Let the people know where they can find your work.
You can find it at ocregister.com sports. And then also I'm on the good old Twitter or whatever you want to call it, but I'm calling it Twitter. Like I keep calling it Staples Center, but whatever, it's yeah. And that's just at my name, Mirjam Swanson.
Thank you so much, everybody. You know where you can find me at Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod, and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and of course, Locked On Clippers, your only 5-day-a-week Clipper podcast, Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays though, if we have a game on Friday, which this week is the case. So you will get a Saturday episode. Let us know what you think. Are we going to start a winning streak? Let me know in the comments section. The age-old proverb continues: Go Clippers.